Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. It is Tuesday. It's, of course, the second time you're seeing me today, but it's Tuesday, so that can only mean one thing. It is Inside Arsenal Extra Time with the one and only James Benge, who I've just realised I've started without him being next to me. I totally left you out there, James. Sorry, mate. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Last second entrance, though.
I know.
It's a big one. I'm like Fabio Vieira off the bench.
I know. Will you make the same sort of impact as Fabio Vieira off the bench? That is a big question.
One
today.
can but dream.
I will judge you at the end. So, I mean, that's a nice little segue into what was a very fun game at the weekend. Obviously, I've spoken about it on the channel so far, but not with you. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that before we move on to other events. It was a fun, as you can probably hear by my throat, my voice at the moment. It was a pretty fun afternoon in the end at the Emirates. What were your thoughts sitting in the press box?
Yeah, it's one of those days where I'm very jealous of people like yourself who kind of, I guess, at the final whistle, I know you have your sort of content to consider and all that stuff, but, you know, you can sort of mill out to the pubs and enjoy a beautiful Sunday evening along the Holloway Road and down to Finsbury Park or wherever you might be enjoying your drinks. And you sort of like sat there going through the presser, listening to, in particular, listening to Erik ten Hag's absolute nonsense, his sort of pretty unconvincing explanations for why his Manchester United team didn't win a game in which they couldn't really pass the ball to midfield. That sort of, but even that, you know, even sort of that, like missing out on the post-match celebrations doesn't sort of really dim what an incredible day it was. You know, I mean, I'm sure we all have our stories, those of us that were there. I was sat between two radio reporters, I think Alex Crook from TalkSport, and I don't know who the other person was, but I know he was a Man United fan. And I never got to hear what the Man United fan was saying at the final whistle because I couldn't hear a thing. Bedlam. I mean, we're always going to compare it to... you were there for both United last-minute winners. How does it compare experiencing that, you know, truly in the ground rather than in our cosseted section of the ground?
No, it was honestly, it was completely different, mate. It was I've not been able to celebrate a goal or win like that since Welbeck against Leicester. You know, it was so much of the reason of me sort of making this sort of shift this season was because of what happened last year and missing that and sitting looking at my dad's seat thinking I really wish I was there for some of these moments, like the Nketiah last-minute goal against United, the Reece Nelson, of course, against Bournemouth, and to actually be in there and experience it. And yeah, it's just been a long time since I've just gone mad hugging random strangers next to me who I have no idea who they are, just in pure elation of a win like that. It was really, really special. Unfortunately, I didn't get to celebrate it in the pubs afterwards. You know what I did afterwards? I went and walked Caledonian Road, sat in the kiosk bit, the front bit of the station on their Wi-Fi, having to upload my video. The only times that I was actually sitting there going to think, God, I wish I was back in the press box and on the Arsenal press Wi-Fi. And instead I was sitting at Caledonian Road train station trying to upload videos and stuff like that. But I did spend a good few hours in the pub before the game, which was a lot of fun, meeting some mates and getting back into that pre-match drinking routine, which was great fun. It was just a brilliant game, and Arsenal thoroughly deserved to win. I thought they were better than Manchester United. I thought United were poor. I thought Erik ten Hag after the game was odd. We'll get on to him. I just wanted to talk about this sort of formation. I mean, I said, and I've been hammered for it a little bit today in the comments of the video I did this morning. I thought that even if Partey was fit, I wasn't sure he'd start. I thought maybe he would use the back four that we saw start. So obviously Ben White, Saliba, Gabriel and Zinchenko. But I thought going into the game, before I heard about Partey's injury, that we might see Declan Rice in the holding role, and then Havertz and Odegaard ahead of him. What do you reckon would have happened if Partey would have been fit? I mean, obviously it's all hypothetical, and we're totally just guessing. But can you imagine a midfield in that game where Partey's fit but on the bench?
It's funny you say that because I heard some whispers after the news of Partey's injury came out that, you know, look, Mikel Arteta, particularly when he has a week to train, he will make sure he looks at multiple options for how he wants to line up his team, as we well know. But the sort of whispers I heard were that the plan had been to start Partey and Rice together, and I think it would have been. I didn't know the full team, but what I heard was, and this is possible. It's certainly that he was considering Partey, Rice. I think that would have meant dropping Havertz. It's just that bit there is me guessing, just because Nketiah has played so well. I don't think he would have dropped. The only thing that makes the other thing that in the game I thought made me think, maybe he would have started Partey at the base and Rice as an 8, was how Zinchenko, and even when he came on Tomiyasu, were inverting so far that Rice was the left-sided central midfielder and Tomiyasu or Zinchenko were on the right. I think there's something about Arteta really wanting to put Rice where he was for West Ham, left side of a midfield 2. So I do wonder, but I think however they did it, I think it worked really well. And although Havertz is getting pelters, I thought there were moments early on where he did some nice little. I mean, it doesn't kind of set against kicking fresh air when you should score. It's not, that's the thing I will remember. But I thought there were nice moments, especially early on, where he was dropping in deep as well and playing some good passes. And even that, there was one where he should really have found Odegaard and he undercooked the through ball. And of course, there was the one for Rashford's goal. But it was all the right ideas. The execution isn't quite there at all.
Honestly, I said this today. He may as well have a sign over his head just saying, I have no confidence. It's so obvious in everything that he's doing. He's just a player who has no confidence. The underhit passes, all those sort of things. It's just so classic of a player who is just overthinking everything. And when the ball comes to him, he's like, I've got to get this right. I've got to get this right. And then he'll just underhit because he's thinking too much. And it's just so plainly obvious. And yeah, it would have definitely been interesting. I think it had Partey been.
Does that though worry you a bit longer term? Because I totally understand why he lost confidence at Chelsea, but nothing about the way Arteta has handled this situation should leave him lacking in confidence. They spent £65 million on him. And a lot of us said that was like twice what we thought he was worth paying. He started him every single game. I don't want to be unsympathetic to the mentality of footballers, and it's not something I necessarily understand. But what's it going to take to get you confident and feeling yourself, Kai, is a question I would be having if I were Arteta, that's for sure.
I think it's just a big moment. I think it's him actually doing something in a match. I think you can have as much faith from a manager as you want. I still think you need to produce something which makes you think, I'm here. That's, I've shown these people who all doubt me what I'm about. And I'm not overly defending Kai Havertz. I've said at the time when Arsenal signed him, I was a bit confused about the signing. I felt like it might work, but it was very much at no point at the start of that summer did I ever think Arsenal were going to sign Kai Havertz for £65 million. But it's just going to be, if he does something special, does something really big in a game, and yet the next game he continues to underperform, that's when I think I'd be really worried, because I'd love to see something where you can almost visibly see the weight lift off his shoulders. And I do feel that he's been slightly unfortunate in a couple of occasions when he has had fairly big moments. Like, it was Fulham, wasn't it? He set up the goal for Odegaard that got ruled off for offside, and even the penalty at the weekend when he went charging through, which I actually quite liked. He showed a bit of urgency there, and it was, instead of shifting the ball on, he actually drove into the space and got the penalty and won the penalty, and then even that was overturned. So when he's had a couple of big moments, they still haven't gone his way almost. So it's like everything's working against him. But look, he's a professional footballer. He's an international footballer. He's a £65 million footballer. He needs to start stepping up and producing in matches. And at the moment, he's not quite doing it. But I still think it's very early to judge. And I know that just annoys the hell out of everyone even saying that. But I really do think it is the case. Right, I just wanted to quickly bring this up. You have mentioned it already. This is from Luke. He says, I'm a loving individual, but genuinely can't stand Ten Hag. Whines when things don't go his way. Shocking behaviour from a Manchester United manager. Thank you, Luke. Now, you were in the press conference after. Quite frankly, it was one of the most... I almost, if you obviously don't watch wrestling, but it just reminded me of Chris Jericho when his brilliant run in WWE, when he had the list of, actually it started in WCW, but he brought it back in WWE. He just had the list of things, and he just put everyone on the list that he didn't like. When someone annoyed him, they'd go on the list. And that's all I could think about when Ten Hag was just reeling off these list of excuses that none of them made any sense at all. Højlund's never a penalty. Offside, it was offside.
It was offside.
Havertz, I still think Ten Hag is slightly fortunate that his team managed to get that overturned, even though I don't think it probably was a penalty. But I think once it's given on the field, I think I'm very surprised that got overturned by VAR. And the goal, Rice's goal was a goal. It wasn't that's never going to get given as a foul. And it just made me I just thought, what's he doing? He's just totally distracting, I think, from what was, I thought, a really poor United performance. I thought they set up like a team who was sort of worrying about relegation rather than a team who had ambitions of a top four or even a title charge. I thought they were really, really negative. And yeah, I came away from that game thinking, wow, United are not very good.
Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of them this season, and I've seen quite a bit of a few other teams. I've not seen every team by any stretch of the imagination, but the two worst teams I've seen in. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this to wind up United fans. I mean this. The two worst teams I've seen in the flesh this season are the three are Luton, Fulham, especially if they don't have João Palhinha in the team, and Man United. Now, they obviously have the quality to get better, but I've never seen a team that looks so incapable of getting the ball out of their back five as United did in the first half. Arsenal pressed them pretty well, but they have, a really good release valve in Andre Onana. And yet, even with that, you just kind of kept having to remind yourself that Christian Eriksen and Casemiro were professional footballers that were like appearing in this football match. It was so easy for Arsenal to hem United in. And that was why, the thing I found almost more baffling was the insistence that this had been a good game by Manchester United. It was like they did the things that United can do, like Rashford did Rashford stuff. And I think we all knew when Havertz lost the ball and Eriksen picked it up, you're like, oh, this is the moment that Rashford does one of the things he does. But like, you can't be a top six. Well, you certainly can't be a top four team playing football the way they do, because 90% of the Premier League will not kind of treat you with the disrespect that Arsenal and Man City will. They won't sort of press you, harass you. If you're Man United and you try and play that way at Craven Cottage against Wolves, as they did, you'll get absolutely nowhere, because there's just nothing in possession about that team. And yeah, Ten Hag, look, I don't want to kind of go too far into that, because we've been in Mikel Arteta press conferences where he's done the exact same thing, but don't come with a laundry list of decisions that have gone against you when your team's made 4 or 5 half decent openings. And like the offside one in particular, I'm just like, that Stockley Park has access to better technology and better angles. They may not be perfect, but offside, it's cut and dry, mate. Much like it's cut and dry that Arsenal were by far the better team, and they weren't amazing by their standards.
No, I didn't think Arsenal were great by any means. I'm not sitting there thinking Arsenal were brilliant in that game. I thought certainly some of what we've seen so far from them this season going forward, they struggled at times to cut United open. They still created some good chances, and had Bukayo stuck his one away when he did, that maybe that sort of grandstand ending wouldn't have taken place. And in a way, I'm almost glad he missed it, because then we did have that grandstand finish, which was so special, and I think we're all going to remember for a long, long time. On Bukayo, I thought he struggled again, and he struggled against Fulham. He didn't have the best game. Yes, he scored the penalty, but he struggled again. I know he got the assist for Declan Rice as well for the corner, but that was just a deep corner. Have you watched Bukayo this season and thought to yourself, he's struggling to really hit top form so far?
Yeah, but maybe that is more just a reflection of what top form for him now looks like, because I've got the numbers in front of me, and like the numbers aren't telling us everything, because it was a bit. I thought United worked really hard to stop Arsenal getting down that side as well, getting down the right. But on a bad day, he created 5 chances, got in position for 3 shots, and should have scored that one, but quite often it goes through someone like goes through the goalkeeper's legs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
He's set high standards, and I do think Arsenal were getting quite a lot of joy putting Martinelli up against Wan-Bissaka. So I think for that reason, maybe we just saw Saka drift more to the edges of the contest. And whenever he gets the ball, you still kind of sense that danger. And I thought the danger was more pronounced in the knowledge that White would overlap. And then for that reason, it's like United start hedging to that side. They sort of say, we've got to close down the Saka, Ødegaard. Rashford was quite good defensively, I thought. The Saka, Ødegaard, White partnership, even if that means letting Martinelli go at Wan-Bissaka. So I think it was probably situational, but it's one to keep an eye on, especially given that we've heard as well today that he's training indoors with England.
Yeah.
Maybe wouldn't be the worst idea for him to get just a little bit of time. He was playing big minutes in pre-season, wasn't he? He's not got a rest, playing for England whenever he can. I mean, this is the life of a key player for one of the best clubs in the world and for England, but it'd be nice for him to just have a little bit of a break. I think that would be all it would take for him to be flying again. What about you?
Yeah, just on the top of my head, I seem to think, has he started quite slowly the last couple of seasons?
Yeah.
I think he has, hasn't he? He's not absolutely exploded into both, like last season, even the season before that. I think
there was big talk about how long he'd gone without a goal.
Yeah. Yeah, so it might just be something, might obviously just take his time a little bit to really sort of get into his best form. 22, of course. How is Bukayo Saka 22? It's his birthday today. Like, he's still 17. It's like he's still surely a 17-year-old kid. He's not 22 already. I remember that first. Were you there in Frankfurt for his first European game?
Yes.
When and Arsenal brought him out in the mix zone afterwards because he scored and set up 2 in that. It was 3-0 win, wasn't it? And they were like, just go easy on him. You're all here. You're in a big group. 17-year-old kid. He's going to be like a rabbit in the headlights. And he came out and was just amazing straight away. And you're like, yeah, this kid's special.
The one thing I would say is he'd had a really good opportunity to hone his art in the mix zone beforehand. I love bringing this up, though. I was the first person to chat to Bukayo, like first external person, after this was the game in Charlotte, which I think was against Fiorentina. And, you know, Bukayo hadn't really broken through then. I don't think he'd even made his debut, had he? So this was under Emery, but he played well in pre-season. And I remember saying to Dan, one of the Arsenal press officers, you know, who do you want? And I was like, I'd like Bukayo Saka. And he's like, this is typical football.London, picking the footballer that no one's heard of. Comes out, he must be 17, 18 then. The quotes are sensational. You just think, this guy's giving better quotes than Gary Cahill, you know, the mix zone legends, better than Socrates. There's a brilliant line where he said, you know, this young generation is going to take on the world, which so often I find myself thinking of. A 17-year-old kid predicting the future. So happy birthday, Bukayo. And yeah, this kid's just so mature.
He is. He's a very special guy. He really is. And yeah, hopefully he finds his top form very, very soon. And, you know, I agree with you. It'd be quite nice if he does get a bit of a rest for England, but I highly doubt it because he never gets a rest. Of course, before the United game was transfer deadline day, a day before United game. Honestly, I was so hungover from the book launch on the transfer deadline day. It was such a mission. I don't know what you think of the squad now. Like, I've got it in front of me. If you're watching this on YouTube, everyone who is, you can see I've got the list of the squad. And I know I've spoken about it on previous videos, but James, in your view, when you look at where Arsenal are now as we sort of head into the first international break, just ahead of the return of the Champions League, do you look at that squad and think that's a squad that is enough for what Arsenal want to achieve? Certainly during the first half of the season. Of course, we've got January where they can add some more to this squad. But do you kind of look at that, or do you think they're taking a little bit of a risk defensively with who they've got there? Because especially when you look at that list, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 8 there, but one of them is out for the season and the other one's Cedric Suarez. So what? And that's no dig at Cedric, but I'm still pretty expecting that Cedric's probably going to go at some point in the next few weeks, whether it be to Turkey or a contract termination. We'll see. But do you think Arsenal got enough after the window?
Not quite. It's sort of a grit your teeth moment, isn't it? And hope you can scrabble through. I mean, we forget how much of, well, these sorts of weeks are reminders how much of the pre-January time, pre-Christmas as well, gets blocked out by international football. And so that's 2 weeks that just give you a little bit more wiggle room, a little bit more of a moment until you get to January. considering then that you'll have Partey go to AFCON in all likelihood. I don't know if Ghana have qualified yet. El Neni would be away as well, wouldn't he? Then the numbers would look really light, because I suppose it's the 6 defenders plus Partey, who's out for 6 weeks. So it's grit your teeth moments and hope you can get through. I think the concern as well is when you look down that list, I don't know that Zinchenko will be able to play 3 games in 7 days more than once or twice between now and Christmas. Tommy, I know that some of the injuries have been a bit like they're not wear and tear injuries, but we all know injuries are the best indicator of future injuries. So it feels one light. I'm going to say something a bit rogue. I wonder if Sergio Ramos would have been a solution to this, or it just needs to be a body, doesn't it? It needs to be someone that you could turn to, if all else fails, because the quality I think is perfectly adequate in all of those players. I wish they'd just picked up a warm body of a fairly experienced defender who's comfortable on a 1-year contract or whatever, sitting on the fringes. Maybe someone that you use kind of in the way that Arteta uses El Neni, or that, I'm reading an excellent book which starts with this book by Charles Watts, talking about how Mikel Arteta was so valuable in the dressing room, even when he wasn't playing that often. I think it would have been nice to have picked up that sort of veteran.
You're basically a Jorginho.
Another Jorginho, yeah.
Another Jorginho. Why do you think they didn't do it then? Because they've obviously had a long time to think about it after Timber's injury. It's not like Timber's just got injured. He was injured a long time ago. So they had a good few weeks to sort of assess it and work things out. And they've decided not to do it. Why do you think they've done that? Because I'm really surprised. I think, especially when you consider they've got rid of Holding and Kieran Tierney, who between them clocked up about over 50 appearances in all competition last season. So although, they weren't regulars by any means, between those two, that's 50 appearances last season. Not starts, obviously, but still, that's a big amount of games that you've lost there. And so the one player you've basically brought in to strengthen the defence, you've lost him all season, and you've given away 2 players who clocked up 50 appearances last season. So there must be a reason that they've decided not to do it. It's because it does, on the face of it, just seem really, really surprising, given the demands and what they're trying to achieve this season, both in domestically and abroad.
And you wiped 200 grand off the wage bill as well, it should be said. Obviously, holding a full sale, but I understand that Real Sociedad, quite surprisingly, actually, are covering all of Tierney's wages. So there was the money there had opened up a little bit, and obviously Pepe will be off soon, and you won't get all his wages off the books, but you'll get some of it. So we talked a lot in the final weeks of the window about they need to sell, they need to trim back the squad, but they actually did a lot of that. There's no one on that list really, other than Pepe and to an extent Cedric, that Arteta wanted gone, that hasn't gone yet, and we know that Pepe will go soon. So I do think for that reason, it's they didn't get the fees they would have liked, but I think therefore you kind of, if you don't get the fees you want, then you adjust what you're going to put in to getting this extra player, because you just want someone like a Yossi Benayoun who can come in for the season, because I think you have to plan off Timber not being available for the whole season. Now, maybe that player wasn't out there. Maybe that player is a free agent that is still on the market. I'm totally spitballing here, and they can actually still sign that free agent for a couple more days. I've not heard any indication that will happen, but I have to assume I know they looked, so I have to assume they just didn't find anyone that ticked their boxes. But I would,
we know they don't panic, don't it? We've seen it in the last few windows. If they don't find someone, they don't do it. They're not just going to sign someone for the sake of it. But even you look at United, they've gone out and signed. They lost Luke Shaw to injury. They went outside Reguilon just to bring him in as cover for that injury. And I'm surprised. Is it almost worth, just keeping Cedric around now for the first half of the season, just to have that option? If you're not going to move him on, if he's not going to go, just to have that option if you need, someone. I know he's not going to play very often, but I sort of look at that now and think it probably is wise. And I know Cedric wants to go, and it has been looking to move. Nothing's come up yet. There is still an opportunity for it to possibly happen, but yeah, I do look at it and just wonder if it's worth keeping him around now, just for the first half of the season anyway.
I mean, I would, because he's not going to kick up a fuss. I'm not saying that Pepe would, but he's someone that Arteta likes as a player and a person. He's a good dressing room guy. I mean, that, and like, kind of those are almost the boxes I was running through about what do I want from this defender that they didn't get. I want someone that can plug a gap in absolute emergency, but more is just a solid guy around the squad. Cedric is as good an option as any to give you that. And I think if he can't find a move he wants, I wouldn't be rushing to terminate his contract. I think with Pepe, the difference is I can imagine that I can see a world where Arteta plays Cedric.
Yeah.
I can list you about 6 players in the academy that Arteta will pick before Pepe.
There is no world where Arteta is going to play Pepe between now and the end of the season, is there? So I agree exactly what you're saying. He's just not going to. He's not going to play Nicolas Pepe. Obviously, things are going on with Pepe at the moment. We've seen lots of reports from France that he's about to sign for Besiktas. Although when I was sort of checking that out, I was kind of told it's nowhere near as sort of clean cut as it seems to be being reported over there. We've now actually seen in France that's now been reported that it's stalled. So that kind of tallies up with what I was being told. And the Saudi Arabia stuff continues to go on. There's more talk about that today. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
What's the latest?
Well, for Saudi,
I should know, but yeah,
I can't. I'd have to check it. I can't remember where I saw it today, but it was definitely.
From what I heard, the salary he's asking for, or he asked for in July, his representatives asked for, was way out of line with like anything he could get from a Saudi Arabian club.
Really? What was the offer? Al Shabab I saw linked today. That was it.
It would have been like a significant pay rise for what he was on at Arsenal. And I think although there are a lot of clubs who in Saudi Arabia would say, yeah, God, he'd be a great addition for us. I think they would sort of maybe counter that his career has gone in a direction since joining Arsenal that means he's maybe not the player that Arsenal paid 72 million and gave best part of 200 grand a week.
Yeah.
To. So, yeah.
The thing is, I don't get why any club would even bother bidding for Nicolas Pepe at the moment, because you just wait it out. You know what's going to happen, don't you? If you don't, why would you make any sort of offer for Pepe? Because if you don't do anything, Arsenal are just going to pay off his contract at some point in the next few weeks, and he'll be available on a free transfer. So it just doesn't make really any sense why anyone would be doing that. It brings into the question again more about Edu and his ability to bring money in. I think Arsenal at the moment is around the sort of 80 million mark, just over, that they've received for players this summer, which isn't the worst. I think there's a big Kieran Tierney shaped hole in that figure that had Tierney gone, which I think Arsenal was certainly expecting. We're all expecting that have made over 100 million this summer, which was the kind of number I think they were aiming at when we started things. So I think that has to be taken into account slightly. And I don't really blame Edu for that. The bids just didn't come in for Kieran Tierney. But I still think there is. I was kind of hoping that I was going to be proved wrong about Eddie's ability to bring money in, and we could kind of silence that. But I don't think that has happened with this summer. And I look at the Rob Holding deal, for example, and I just think that's the most remarkable deal of all the ones that have taken place. That's worse than Bert Leno almost, which was dreadful. But £1 million up front for Rob Holding, I don't get it. You Tottenham. I had this rant this morning, so I don't want to just duplicate it. But Tottenham got 13 million for Sanchez yesterday.
Yeah,
who's the same age, who had less than a year left in his contract. Holding with the option had 2 years. He's going to a good Premier League club. I just don't get it. I do not understand how you only get £1 million for a Holding. If you're in negotiations with a club, and Palace aren't poor. I can't believe Palace wouldn't have gone higher. I mean, maybe I'm just totally wrong, but I don't get how you can't get more than that money for a 27-year-old proven Premier League player with 2 years left on his deal when you're selling to another Premier League club. But this point that Adventure Wannabe makes says Edu has finished as a salesman. Holding deal is the latest of a series of shambolic sales. Sackable, really. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Or at least hire someone else to do our sales. Now, I was talking. It was at a book launch. Me and Sam Dean were just having a chat. And we were talking about selling and the money was brought in, and we were that very sort of thing of, can you hire a sales manager? Can you appoint a sales manager? I don't think it would ever happen. It would be seriously undermining to Edu. But
Yes.
is there an example of this in world football where a club has a sporting director, but then they would also have someone who just purely looks after sales? I can't think of one, but is there one?
I cannot think of one at all. But I think there are certainly sporting directors who make their money and make their reputation through selling well, aren't there? Like the one that immediately comes to mind is someone like a Monchi, who has gone off the boil a fair bit since Arsenal nearly appointed him. I mean, what's the guy's name? Michael Edwards at Liverpool as well. Because this is the thing: is your immediate response to posts like that is to sort of say, well, look at all the players Chelsea haven't sold. And I mean, Sanchez is a good example, but look at many of the players that Tottenham haven't sold and are stuck on their wage bill. I mean, Højbjerg's still there, isn't he? And all sorts. But then there are still teams like, the Liverpool in their peak period. And I did want to sort of believe at the start of this summer that Arsenal could put themselves in a position like Liverpool were in, where Flo Balogun and Dominic Solanke were quite comparable in a way. And I thought the Flo Balogun fee all in was a tad disappointing. I mean, it's quite weird. I had things prepped, and everything prepped had club record sale, and it's not. Like for Flo Balogun, who you wanted 50 million for. I think that there's clearly a thing with Edu where he has caved at the last minute on several deals. Leno's a great example because they were telling Fulham for a long time in that summer, price is about 10 million, and it collapsed. Balogun, 50 million to 40. What was about 35 million pounds? I can only think of it in euros. 40 million euros. That's a generous discount, that isn't it? That is Boxing Day sales level discount. Holding is the prime example.
In a way, I kind of agree because of that 50 million. But I'd much rather Arsenal sold Balogun for 34 million pounds to Monaco than they sold him for 50 million pounds to a Premier League club. And if they're not going to sell him to a Premier League club, I don't really see them getting. They were never going to get 50 million from a foreign club. I looked at this at the time. The top 10 sales of all time in France, all 10 of them are PSG. Transfer fees paid, all 10 of them PSG, obviously. And I think number 10 in that list was 44 million euros or something. So, I think for Arsenal to got any more for Balogun, if they weren't selling to PSG, who obviously weren't interested in him, I think I kind of give Edu a little bit of leeway in that one. And I would, like I said, I'd much rather him gone there and take 10 million pounds off than him go to Chelsea. If they'd have sold him to Chelsea or Premier League club, they would have had to got closer to 50 million. But I kind of can give him a little bit of leeway on that one.
But I do think if the money you're getting on offer for Bernd Leno is what was that, 5?
Less.
4 or 5?
It was 4, I think, up front. I think it raised to about 8 million at the end of this season with like certain things. They avoided relegation again.
Yeah, exactly. Which, to be fair, they might well do because of Bernd Leno. If that's what you're getting, you need to be confident enough, assertive enough to go, no, we'll keep him. Holding £1 million with maybe 2.5 million. I mean, how some of that is weighted as well. It will be, some of it will be if Palace step, but some of it will be if Holding makes X number of appearances, and Palace have got him in to be the third choice centre back, and he may well not make those appearances if Mark Gay and Anderson are fit because they're great centre backs. For that, I'd rather have Rob Holding. Like, if Arsenal were in that position they're in now, and someone said for £1 million you can have Rob Holding, I'd go, yeah, go on. Smash glass in case of emergency centre back. It wasn't as bad as people said. I mean, Arsenal season would take a nosedive a bit if Saliba got injured and Holding had to play the run in, but it would take more of a nosedive if Saliba gets injured and you've got to reconstitute your whole midfield, or you've got to promote some kid from the academy to plug the gap. I just think some of these, it's better to not do a deal than to do such bad deals selling to Premier League clubs.
Yeah, I wonder if the holding one was, he's such a nice guy.
Nice guy.
He's been around for so long, and it was kind of like, look, you can go. We're going to be nice. You can go, but I don't think that helps anyone long term in terms of finances. But one thing, and I do with sort of ranting about the holding deal, which I have been. I do kind of slightly contradict myself in a way where I kind of think, to be honest, I don't really care that much about how much money Arsenal get for players, because they've been rubbish sellers for a while now, and the Cronkies have still invested a hell of a lot of money, and so it's not like it's stopping Arsenal signing players. They're still doing it. You just kind of want the club to be a slightly better run in that regard, though, don't you? I think, and I was hoping this summer was going to be the summer where we saw that, and they kind of stopped being seen as a little bit of pushovers in the transfer market, and I'm not sure they've shaken that tag off yet, and I think that's a little bit disappointing.
Can I ask you a question? How much do you think let's assume that the situation with Smith Rowe goes the way it looks like it's going, and he doesn't play enough over this season, and I don't think anything will be decided before the summer. How much would Arsenal get for Smith Rowe?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, it's hard, isn't it?
Because I fear it could be quite low.
Well, yeah. I mean, what did they reject those bids? I think the highest Villa went was 35. Did they go 35? Yeah.
And at the time, I was told double that would be considered. Then you're willing to have a conversation.
Yeah, but that was when he was hot and he was in the team and he was one of the key men, wasn't it? And obviously, if he's literally going to sit on his Arsenal season on the bench, then it's you're not going to be in a strong bargaining position again come the summer. The only thing is he is young, he is English, you would be selling to a Premier League club, but I really don't want to consider the prospect of selling Smith Rowe. But he needs to play. He needs to start getting minutes, and if not, you're not going to be able to ask too much. But I would not want to be parting ways with Emil for anything less than £40 million by any means, because I still think he's such a good player, and he'll go on and be a great player anywhere, and I don't want to see him play for anyone else. I want to see him play for Arsenal, and I think that's a lot of the frustration stemming from Havertz as well at the moment, isn't it? Everyone's just like, Smith Rowe could play that role, he can play it well, he could play it more effectively than Havertz is doing at the moment, and I think that's kind of why a lot of people at the moment are getting on Havertz's back, just because Smith Rowe is just this completely unused player sitting on the substitutes bench. It'll be interesting once we come back from this international break and all the football starts, sort of coming week after week now with Champions League, Carabao Cup. Although Arsenal, whether Arsenal get through the first round of that Carabao Cup remains to be seen. They've not got the nicest of ties. And you would hope then that Smith Rowe, and Mikel said it, didn't he? He said, look, this period, it's just one game every weekend. It's very tough. Once we come back from the international break, that's going to change. There's going to be lots of games and everyone's going to get minutes. And I just hope he's true to his word in that regard. And we start to see him, because he's far too good to be sitting around. He really, really is. Right. I don't know if you share your anxiety. What were your first thoughts when you heard yesterday that Gabriel Jesus had got a late call up to the Brazil squad? What was your first thought that ran through your head?
Don't like that. Don't like that one bit. I was like, can't Arsenal do something about it? Or you're like, God, I wish if only there was a world where you could sort of go back through time and say to Mikel, or say to Fabio Vieira, don't play the pass, because who knows, if Jesus doesn't score, maybe the Brazil national team don't really notice he's back.
Yeah,
I just don't want him. You want to wrap him in cotton wool, because as good as Nketiah has been, like, Arsenal get their spark. Like, it's all a bit more propulsive when Jesus is on the pitch, and you can't do anything about it. And I think the real challenge is he's going there, and let me get the fixtures up, but I know it's the start of the World Cup qualifying for Brazil, and of course they're Brazil. They'll get to the World Cup. Bolivia, Peru. He's got to go to Peru on Wednesday, early hours of Wednesday morning, our time in the UK. So I pretty much think, quite often with those games we've seen in the past, you kind of have to write off them playing in the game after. I think Everton away is on the Sunday, so maybe he can take part. But it's just not. It's not at all helpful for Arsenal. Of course, the Brazilian FA shouldn't be thinking about what's best for Arsenal, but to an extent, they should be thinking about what's best for Gabriel Jesus. And I'm not sure that flying across the Atlantic Ocean, then doing all the internal traveling within South America for two games where he's probably not needed. I'm not sure that's what's good for Gabriel Jesus.
No, I agree. I was just like, oh, you're kidding me. As soon as I heard, but I think they're South American players, especially, they're so determined to play for their country.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be really happy. And lots of people have been sort of atting me on social and saying, this could be good for him. We'll get some minutes into his belt and he'll come back fitter and more match fit when he comes back. Quick question I didn't ask you: do you think Diego Dallo has stopped sliding yet? How glorious is that? Some of the memes on the social were hilarious for that. Well, brilliant.
It was like the sort of anti that Sol Campbell slide.
Yeah,
that Sol Campbell slide. But like you never got near the ball. Oh,
that was so good. There's a brilliant
picture
never
doubted it for a second.
There's a brilliant picture from behind the goal of Dallo. I think he has at that point just about stopped sliding, but he's got his neck arched backwards to see where the ball is, and the ball's just rolling into the bottom corner, and you get just a look on his face of like, oh no, this is going to be all over the internet.
So I was, when he was warming up, I was like, what's Jesus' record against United like? The minute I saw that he'd never done anything for City against them, no goals, no assists, I knew if I just put this tweet out into the universe, he's scoring one here. And what a goal it was.
So you're taking credit for that, aren't you?
I am. I get the assist.
You get the assist. Fabio Vieira does not get the assist. Did you see? Have you watched Bench Cam yet? Arsenal released Bench Cam. Did you see in the build up to that goal? Arteta is sort of pointing and screaming at Fabio Vieira to take the ball into the corner.
Oh,
He's got that ball.
Is he?
Yeah,
mate. Fabio is not doing that. Fabio knows there's an assist in this.
It was kind of Martinelli against Aston Villa all over again.
It wasn't quite that much fun. Didn't you think? I was trying to if we briefly go back to this game, because there's been so many brilliant daft endings. In my head, I've been trying to rank this one. I think obviously Bournemouth is the zenith. I don't know when something that isn't winning a trophy will beat that in the Emirates era. But weirdly, because you brought it up, I kept thinking, I think it was because it was quite funny as well for us. We were both there, weren't we? And there was both the celebration and the joyousness, and the sense that this might be something might be building here for Arsenal. But it was also just really bloody stupid finale against Aston Villa, and that for me is still number 2 in my power rankings of brilliant endings to Arsenal games, because that was the one for me that just had the absolute.
That was very, very funny, especially as it was me, you, and Kaya sat next to each other. And we were right in the middle of the Villa fans, and we had to try. You had to try and keep it under wraps a little bit. I think we were hitting each other on the legs as we go.
With the coach swinging behind us.
Yeah, they're having a ruck. The analysts are having a ruck behind us in the background, and the fact that Evi Martinez had banged one in off his head when Jorginho's shot come off the bar, that was very funny, and that meant a lot as well, because Arsenal that was after the City defeat, wasn't it? So they'd gone 3 games without defeat at that point, and you kind of thought all season over, and then they responded, and that did feel big. Sunday was really special, to be honest. I think it was because I was back in there as well, back in the crowd, and I hadn't had a day like that or a game like that in so long since Welbeck. It was up there. It was strangely, the Jesus one was the better of the two, although obviously Rice's goal was the winner, and that was the crucial one. The fact you're still almost kind of celebrating that, and then you're kind of nervous because they had a couple of long throws, and it's like, oh my God, do not let them equalise, and then, but you still got that adrenaline pumping from the first goal, and then suddenly Jesus scored down. It was that brilliant sort of move as well, where each stage of it, the anticipation goes up with more and more. First, when Reece, who by the way was brilliant when he came on, Reece Nelson, really good cameo, when he won that ball, and then it got to Vieira, and you kind of thought, oh, go on, Fabio, go on, and you hear the crowd go up it each time, and then he plays the ball to Jesus, and the crowd go up again, and then as Dallo comes sliding across, there's that silence of what's going to happen, and then obviously cuts inside, and you hear, it's just amazing, absolute scenes, as they say. It was a lot of fun, right, we're up to about sort of 45 minutes, so there's a couple of, I just wanted to quickly, because I think we need to flag this, because I think it was really big, and he's been speaking today. Eddie Nketiah, big moment for him. Obviously, got the start of the weekend. I thought he worked hard. It was a difficult game for a lot of players, but I didn't think he put in a bad shift by any means. But big moment for Eddie today. He was talking in front of the press for the first time. Talked about receiving the call when he was at home with his parents and his family, and the text came through, and a real special moment for him, and rich reward for a really good start to the season. And so what we're kind of, on one hand, was talking about Jesus going off, and we're worried about Jesus. Eddie, of course, has been just as influential this season, if not more influential than Jesus, and he's going off on international duty as well. But It's kind of a slightly different feeling with him, isn't it? It's not, rather than anxiety, you kind of feel a little bit kind of almost proud that he's got this call up. It's taken a while, and yeah, I thought he spoke really well today in the presser.
Really well. And I think one of the joys of this was, I don't know about you, I hadn't heard about it. I don't believe it was even being reported anywhere before the squad dropped. So it was like, oh wow, and you sort of see it on the wow, Eddie. Huge delight for him. And also we've got to remember, he's had ways of getting out of the England setup. Ghana were really pushing for him before the World Cup. And I think we all looked at that situation and was like, Eddie, you should go for that, mate. That's the chance to play at a World Cup, the chance to play senior football. And I think a lot of us thought Nketiah won't get that with England. Delighted to be wrong on that front, because he has developed into a really solid all-round forward with those top-level poaching qualities. It's a long way off, but well, it's not, is it? It's the end of this season. Euro 2024. Let's say it's the 88th minute. It's 1-1 in the semi-final. God, I'd take that right now. And Southgate's got one sub to make. You'd want to throw Nketiah on the pitch. There are qualities there that you love having in tournaments, aren't there? That poacher's instinct. So I hope he gets his chance against Ukraine or Scotland. The striker pool is hardly overflowing after Harry Kane. So if he can keep getting his minutes at Arsenal, he's probably got a really good chance of being on the plane to Germany. And
I think
that would be amazing.
Going to be in the running. I think who would he be going up against at the moment? Callum Wilson. I don't know, Flo, I suppose. If Flo bangs the goals in for Monaco.
No,
Flo, of course, he's gone to USA. Yes. What am I talking about?
And he is cut tied because of some CONCACAF tournament that you can watch on Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I know he is absolutely chosen the USA. So yeah, scrap that.
Calvert-Lewin, maybe, if he's ever fit.
Not going to stay fit, isn't he? And I think the fact they've signed Beto now, who's looked quite good actually in a couple of brief appearances I've seen for Everton, it's almost like they're sort of moving on from Calvin Phillips at the moment under Dyche. I'm dreading that game, by the way, so much after the international break at Goodison. Absolutely dreading it. I hate Goodison as it is. And no matter how rubbish Everton are and how good Arsenal are, they will always lose there. It's just, and you just know I'm dreading it. Absolutely dreading it. But yeah, who else is there? Callum Wilson?
Abraham,
Danny Ings. I feel like we're missing. I feel like we're missing someone.
We really aren't. It's and it's because it's kind of the big thing that's hovering over England, isn't it? And for 2026, will Harry Kane still be going? So what would be incredible? 2026 World Cup, England draw USA, Balogun on one team and Nketiah on the other. That is what the Arsenal writers of the world demand.
Ivan Toney, there you go, and Ollie Watkins.
Ivan Toney's quite good, isn't he?
Yeah, and Ollie Watkins, who's had a decent run for Villa. Certainly, the end of last season, Watkins had a very decent run. He got called up once, didn't he?
He did get called up.
Yeah, he got called up. Things with Southgate, so many times we saw it with Ivan Toney when he first called him up. He didn't actually give him a game, did he? He called him up for the squad, then didn't use him. So we're interested to see if Eddie actually gets a run out over the.
Now that you mentioned Toney, I'm like, well, if Toney's anything like he was before, Eddie's basically got to hope there's a third striker in that squad. But
yeah,
he's got a good chance of being in and around there, and maybe an injury happens. And he do England know England would not be a worse team having Eddie Nketiah in the squad.
No, I think you're right. Okay, just going to flag this one before we go now. I was looking through the comments. I thought, oh, this is quite a good one to go with. Now, obviously, this is going back a couple of seasons after those 3 opening defeats. Then went away on the international break, came back for the Norwich game. I should know that because that's played quite a key part in the book. And suddenly Ramsdale was in, and it was a kind of the new dawn almost. Was kind of that game? I think Arsenal it might have ended with all 6 summer signings on the pitch together at the same time. They certainly did in that Tottenham game that followed it. I don't think this is going to happen. But what do you think about Ramsdale potentially being replaced by Raya after the international break? Do you think it will happen?
I think it's 50. I don't think it will. But I may be only something like 55-45 on that.
When's the Brentford game? The Brentford game's coming up fairly soon now. I saw Tom Canton reported today that Brentford have given Arsenal permission that they can play Raya in that game. So that would definitely be his first match, wouldn't it? If he doesn't get a call up before that.
And then the Champions League starts the following week. The one thing I would say is I thought Ramsdale was very cautious and a little slow with his passing. And against a team like United in particular, I thought having Raya, who is so ready to come high up the pitch to deal with danger, way out of his box, I thought that would have helped a little bit. So I don't think that like Ramsdale gave Arteta exactly what he wanted, what he's wanted in the past. I still think Ramsdale's done enough to hold on, and he's not done anything wrong. I think you know me. I've said all along. I think that Raya will take this starting role at some stage this season. I think now he feels a little too early.
Yeah,
but I still see it coming down the tracks if Ramsdale doesn't start adding a little bit more zip when he has the ball. It's so frustrating because I've seen him do that so many times in an Arsenal shirt. Get the ball, move it quickly, ping it if he needs to, or keep it short. But I thought one of the reasons Arsenal have been a little bit slow this season is Ramsdale could really inject a bit more pace when the ball's at his feet. What do you reckon? You're a no. You think it's
no? I don't think
Ramsdale.
I agree. I think Ramsdale still keeps the spot. I think there's a difference in the comparison. Obviously, Arsenal lost those 3 games and they've just got hammered against City. I don't really think any of the goals were Leno's fault in that 5-0 at City before the international break, but it kind of, you felt like things needed to change a little bit. And obviously, Mikel thought that as well. Obviously Arsenal haven't lost a game yet this season. They're sitting with 10 points from 12. And I know some people were questioning Ramsdale for Rashford's goal. I think that was very harsh. I think, you can certainly question Ben White. You can question Saliba for that. I think that could have been defended far, far better, that whole situation. But, Ramsdale got his hand to it, but it was a decent shot. It was right in the corner. I think there's a lot of more people to blame for that incident than there was Aaron Ramsdale. So I think it'd be really harsh. I think they'll keep it as it is. And then, once the Brentford game in the Cup comes around, we'll see Raya. Maybe we'll see him in the Champions League as well. And that'll be the kind of how you try and keep both happy throughout the season.
Shall we briefly talk about the Champions League draw? Briefly, because we ain't got long. What do you think about it? Anyone else a bit disappointed?
It was during the book launch. So we had it on the big screens while, I was signing books at the time. So everyone was kind of queuing up and they were watching on the screen. I kept having to ask, because what's happened? I kept hearing cheers and I'd look around and see what's happened. And I was talking to Sam about it and he was like, it feels a bit Europa League. And I think it does when you look at it. It does. I mean, obviously Arsenal played PSV in the Europa League last season. Sevilla are the Europa League specialists, and Lens, they hadn't been in the Champions League for a long, long time. So it does feel a little bit Europa League, but I don't think that's anything to complain about. I think you want that in the group stage. As much it'd have been brilliant to return to the Champions League with a huge game against one of the giants at the Emirates for the sort of romance of it all. Just get through the group, win the group, and then that game is going to come anyway further down the line. So yeah, no, I'm fairly happy. I'd much rather have this group than the Arsenal group.
We have a sort of stats and info team that sort of pull together the odds. Like they gave us the Champions League winners odds on like June the 11th. So start of the summer, Arsenal were, I'm having a quick glance through now. They give me an American odds, which I know none of our thingies were understand, but they were somewhere around 7th or 8th favourites. Similar-ish, maybe. Well, certainly their odds significantly decreased after the draw, and they're now 4th favourites. You kind of have to think they've got such a good chance of topping the group. And as someone that professionally watches a lot of Champions League, I think the brief era where it didn't matter where you finished in your group is now well and truly over. Like there are 6 or 7 really good teams in that group, in that 32. Most of them will top their group. So if you can get a second place team, then you're in the last 8, and then you are truly in the realms of who knows what random nonsense might happen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm happy with it. I can't wait. It's actually, I was looking at the fixtures earlier to see what the next home game was, and it was the Champions League. And I did think, oh my God, the next time we're at the Emirates is the Champions League. It's just going to be so great. I can't wait. Even, it might not be a Bayern Munich, it might not be a Barcelona, but yeah, just hearing that. I know you're a big fan of the Europa League anthem, James.
I'll just be playing that. Get my noise cancellers on.
I still hate when you put that on as Tony Soprano listening to it. How dare you link the Sopranos to the Europa League? But yeah, I can't wait to hear that Champions League theme once again. Look, we are up to the 55-minute point. So if you are one of the few who might still be listening or watching, thank you very much for that, everyone. And myself and James will be back next week. Not going to have too much of Arsenal to talk about next week because it's going to be obviously a jam-packed week of international football to go, but we'll still come back and do a show for you. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And for the usual Inside Arsenal, I'll be back tomorrow, of course, talking all things the club. So keep tuned for that. James, thank you very much, mate. Have a very good evening. What are you up to now? What's the plan for the rest of the Tuesday?
Well, Hannah's out, so
party for one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to play some Hogwarts Legacy on my PS5 because I'm grown up.
Are you going to do that with Art DeRocha?
If it were 2-player, I promise Art and I would be playing it. Yeah, he got me into it, and I have a level 24 Slytherin kid called Bruce Wayne because I couldn't come up with a better name, and having all sorts of fun on that.
You're never.
What about yourself? You're presumably going to get the kids ready for school or something horrible.
I haven't done that. Kids go back to school again, but I'm sorry, you're not getting away. You're never taking the piss out of me for watching wrestling ever again after what you just said about that.
Harry Potter video games.
Yeah. So nothing fun for me. I'm going to be uploading this video and a podcast for the rest of the evening.
Pays the bills.
And yeah, getting ready for the kids to return to school. The school holidays are over. As much as I love my kids, you have no idea how happy that makes me. Right. Cheers, mate. And we'll catch up with you soon. Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah. See you next week.